So life is set up to fail you. How's that one for a topic? Why is life set up to fail you? So life is set up to fail you whenever you make something outside of you your source of safety, security, support, or supply. And I'm gonna get back into this, but I want to tell it by way of a story. Years ago, after I had my quote unquote spiritual opening, and it shattered my life, my sense of self, really rocked my world, and I basically tried to become a monk. And the monk life didn't work so well, but I ultimately ended up cloistering myself in my own apartment and really going on this deep inner journey. And at the time, I had a nice savings account from being an actor, but I didn't want to spend it. So, because I felt like that was my nest egg, that was my security blanket, that was my buffer. And I instead put money on credit cards and did things like that, bills and all of that. And at a certain point in this deep dive, monastic kind of way of life, of prayer and meditation and discovery and insight, I went broke again. And I was really angry at life, angry at God. I call it my Gary Sinise moment from Forrest Gump, where I was like, bring it on, God. You know, he's at the top of the mast. And I just didn't understand how was it possible that I was such a good little spiritual boy and life was betraying me, life was failing me. And I remember one night I sat in my leather chair, my faux leather chair, and I laid the gauntlet down to God. I said, either all this stuff is real or it's a bunch of BS, but I am not getting up from this chair until I know the truth one way or the other. They're gonna have to pry my cold, lifeless hands from this faux leather chair, but I'm not moving. And meanwhile, I was ready to be evicted. I had bill collectors calling me, and I sat in that chair and I meditated and I prayed, and the daylight turned to the dusk, and the crickets came out for their nightly chorus, and I wrestled with my demons like Jacob until I was pinned to the mat. And at one point in the middle of the night, all of a sudden this energy shifted in me, and it was like a voice, but I don't know if it was a voice or just an awareness. And it basically said to me, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And I literally turned around and expected to see Moses looking a lot like Charlton Heston holding up one of those tablets. And I sat back with it again, and it again repeated it to me. It said, you have made your bank account your source. And whenever you make anything outside of you your source of power, of safety, of security, the universe is designed to fail you. And it went on to explain, because when you make something outside your source, anybody or anything, you are having to give your power away to that. And then you have to begin to maneuver and manipulate and cajole and control and basically twist yourself up into a pretzel, try to make sure you get what is outside of you, or that you'll hold on to what you've got, right? And then what begins to happen is who you really are, your real voice, your real message, your real need, your real truth, your real mission, your real reason for being here starts to get subordinated to survival, to I gotta say the right thing here so I don't lose my job. I can't stand up for the truth here or they'll reject me. I can't really go for what I want or I'll go broke. And little bit by little bit, and sometimes dramatically, you lose yourself. You lose your power. You lose your connection to the real source of all creation. And now you are not bringing forth the real fruit of your kind. What happens to a branch when it doesn't bear fruit? It gets pruned. What did Jesus do to the fig tree that wasn't bearing any fruit? He cursed it and it died. A lot of good Christians don't like to talk about that part. This Prince of Peace cursing a tree and killing it, not very loving, but it was a symbolic metaphor that if you're not bringing forth the fruit of your nature, then nature doesn't need you. And if you're not fulfilling the function that you're here for, then you're not necessary. And I know that sounds harsh, but life is both love and it is law, and it is efficient. And so there's a fail-safe mechanism. When you start to give away your power too much and you start to make something or someone your source, especially if you're doing the inner work to be powerful, to be empowered, to awaken, to fulfill your potential, then this fail-safe mechanism is going to start making that thing fail you. That person you're giving all your love to, but really it's codependence, they're going to start being a jerk. You're going to feel betrayed. They may even abandon you. And you'll accuse them of betraying and abandoning you. But the truth is you betrayed and abandoned yourself a long time before that. Or that job that you've been sacrificing your truth to make a living, it'll start getting cramped. It'll start having issues. You'll lose respect. All kinds of problems will happen. And so on and on, you'll start to see this. And that's what happened for me. I was racking up credit card debt while I was leaving my savings account there so that I wouldn't lose my security blanket. And then I maxed my credit cards out, and then I had to use my savings account, and then I ran my savings down, and then I was literally living on a prayer. And in that moment when this really dropped in, and I got that there really is a something within us that is the source of everything, I could feel it. And in that moment of feeling myself reconnected, what I call being resourced, it was like a pressure valve opened up and peace filled my body. And it was a peace like I'd never known. I'm getting chills now even as I think about it. It was a peace that wasn't based on my bank account, on my balance sheet, on my self-worth or my net worth. It was the peace that passes human understanding, the peace of God, the peace of truth. And I crawled into bed and I slept literally like a baby. And for the next few days, I walked around kind of in this bliss. I knew intellectually that I was broke. I knew intellectually that I was about to get evicted, but I was at peace. And the phone rang, and it was my former acting agent. And he said, I know you don't do commercials anymore because you're too spiritual. I was crazy back then. He said, but they just called looking for you out of the blue. And I heard the little voice say, this is your answer. And I said, okay, I'll go on this commercial audition. It was for Pepsi. Went on it, booked the job. They turned it into 2 commercials. In 2 days, I made more money for 2 days' work than I'd ever made in an entire year in my life. And it paid for all of my bills. And it began the journey of me learning to live more from insight than eyesight. Stop no longer leaning on resource, but learning to lean on the source, to live from the source of all creation. And my life began to grow. Abundance began to show up. More of me began to emerge. And the rest is history. It continued to grow. And through recessions and challenges and losses and all of these things that could normally take somebody down, instead, it's helped to lift me up even more as I leaned on and lived from this source within. And so if you're struggling right now, if things are failing you, look and see where have you given your power away? Where are you making someone, something, some condition your source of safety, security, support, or supply? And begin to do the work of getting reconnected and ask this question. If I truly believed I was totally supported by life, how would I show up today? Who would I be? What would I do? What would I stop doing? What would I do differently? In my relationships, in my work, how would I show up? Contemplate that daily. Journal about that. And as the guidance emerges, begin to create a new plan. A plan to become fully resourced and ultimately completely resourceful, which means to be full of source again. I hope this inspires you. And until next time, remember, live authentically, love unconditionally, and follow your destiny.